And welcome to this week's DuckSoup webinar. Today, our presenter, Giles Garnett, the head of professional services, will be showing how to use email marketing with LinkedIn automation, DuckSoup. Me, Jin, the head of customer support, will be answering your questions via live chat. And at the end of the webinar, as usual, we will have Q&A with Giles. So let's begin.
Thank you, Jin. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, to everyone joining today's DuckSoup webinar, be that recorded or live. Once again, we're very grateful for you joining us and hope everyone is keeping safe and well. Just to introduce myself to those who are new to DuckSoup, my name is Giles Garnett. I'm head of professional services and have been presenting the webinars for DuckSoup for around the last 8 months or so. If you require extra additional support or consultancy through the booster or technical calls, I'm currently running all of those, so you'll be speaking to me directly if required. While I'm presenting, Jin, as she just mentioned, will be doing her best to answer your questions on the web chat. So please try and keep the questions on topic so they can be useful for the whole audience. Non-webinar related topics, if you could raise those via the normal DuckSoup support pages, that would be fantastic. And then any appropriate questions I will field at the end of the webinar. Now, in last week's webinar, it was an extra one. We presented some information on the new release of DuckSoup, so 7.4, featuring the DuckSdash. This week's topic will be focusing on how DuckSoup can assist you with your email marketing campaign. So just very briefly, for anyone that is new, we always try and cover this just in case we have some newcomers on the calls. Basic functionality of DuckSoup. You can automate many of your activities in LinkedIn utilizing the functionality in DuckSoup. You can use it to scan or visit profiles. You can organize your leads using tags within DuckSoup. You can connect with profiles and then engage and re-engage with prospects. That's all functionality of the Pro version. Within the Turbo version, you also have the ability to schedule automated follow-ups, and also the ability to have automated, to have workflow integration. And by workflow integration, we mean giving the ability to integrate your LinkedIn lead generation activities with whichever other system you are using to automate the data flow between systems. So by using webhooks, data can automatically be transferred using a system such as Zapier or Integromat to a number of other places, from a Google Sheet to a CRM. We'll be touching on some of that during this webinar, as to show you how to extract emails, etc., etc. With automated follow-ups, you have the ability to send customized messages over a prescribed period of time for up to 31 days from when a connection request has been accepted. Since version 7.4 was released about 10 or 11 days ago, you can also now make use of the DuckSdash, and I'll show you that very briefly at the end of the webinar today. And there's the direct integration with Pipedrive. So I will very, very briefly show that at the end of the webinar if we have time. Hopefully we have. So as you all know, email has been at the cornerstone of lead generation and marketing activities for many years. It's a fast, flexible, and cost-effective means by which to reach out to your customers. And there are a number of ways to capture email addresses during your LinkedIn activity using DuckSoup. And during the demo, I will try and show you as many of them as possible, and the options you should consider to use as you go about your daily tasks. There are different options, whether you've got DuckSoup Pro or DuckSoup Turbo. The thing to remember is that whenever you visit a profile with a paid version of DuckSoup running, the data from that profile you visit is captured, and that can be accessed in a number of ways. But the most obvious and simplest way is just to purely download your visit data. I'll show you that shortly, and you can do that periodically, and I will show you the data that gets populated there. You also have the option to pay for Ducks points, which will give you the chance to capture email addresses for second and third degree connections as and when you visit them. I won't go spend too much time on this, but 1 DuckSoup point equals 1 successful email found. That means that if DuckSoup is not able to find a profile's email, or if a lookup isn't required, a point would not be deducted from your account. Maybe we'll cover that a bit later if we have time as well. So gathering gathering email data by use of webhook functionality is also possible, and by making use of this, and this would be functionality available only for Turbo users. And by making use of this, you can trigger automatically a number of actions depending on what your requirement is and what platform you're using for your email marketing. So I'm now going to step by step go through the various options depending on how you would approach this by doing a bit of a demonstration. So I'll come out of there. Now, hopefully today we have a clear picture and I've zoomed in, so hopefully it won't be too pixelated, and I'll try not to go too quickly. So as you go through and visit people's profiles, and that can be first degree, second degree, or third degree, you will realize that the counter in the corner here on the duck soup icon goes up. I have a Turbo account, which is why the duck is sort of a turquoisey color. If you have a Pro account, it's red. But if I click on the duck soup icon, I have this option here to download data. And if I press on the download data button, that opens up a pop-up. Scan data is when you're just purely looking at scanning a result list, so you don't get much detailed information there. The thing that you're interested in here is the visit data. And if I click on visit data here, that will download me a CSV file. If I open that CSV file, we can see the data that is then contained within. Let's just zoom in a little bit more so that we can, hopefully everyone can see this clearly. There we go. And you can see here for each profile that I visited, we can see that this was done today. I think most of these are from today. There we go. You can see here you get various fields of data. You get the ID, which is the unique ID database number against each profile, the time that you visited the profile, URL to the profile, whether it's a first degree, a second degree, or a third degree connection, first name, middle name, last name. But if we scroll further along here, you can see here we get this column here, which is email address. Now, it's only when a contact is a first degree connection that you usually get to see the email address. Very often you will find that most people have their email address hidden within LinkedIn. If you're just scrolling through second and third degree connections or visiting second and third degree connections, I tend to find between 5 and 8% of those email addresses are visible. People have their profiles set to open, and then you can see an email address there. But as you can see here, you can gather an email address just by carrying out visits and then downloading the data later. So that's the very, very simple way of doing it. And that's a way that you could use if you were using the Pro version of the product. In order to, let's not save that, in order to maintain sort of data integrity, et cetera, periodically you can clear your data from that cache. And then when you download it and then clear your data, so you start with a clean set of data each time. Now, what's more interesting, I think, is when you can actually have this happen automatically for you. And you can use the webhook functionality within DuckSoup to make this happen. And you have two options, or actually have three options here, but we'll look at two of them today in detail. The first one would be to use Zapier. The second one would be to use Integromat. There is the possibility to build this within directly within Google Sheets as well, and maybe we'll look at that in a future webinar, but that has also from a high level been documented on the blog pages already. So if I go to Zapier now and we create a Zap to capture data as we visit profiles, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, most of you will be familiar with this, and I think we've talked about Zapier a number of times. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through creating a Zap and show how that would populate, in this case, a spreadsheet. I've created a spreadsheet in Google Sheets already here called Webinar Demo, and I've got various columns here already populated with just some basic data that I want to capture during these visits. The most important, of course, being this column here, the email addresses. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to add some filters to make sure I only capture profiles where there is an email visible. So we'll go back to my Zaps, and I'm now going to create a new Zap. I ought to zoom in a little bit because I have a feeling that that may be required. There we go. And I'm going to call this one just test webinar. There we go. And the first thing we'll need to do is we'll need to create a webhook, a unique URL whereby all our data will be sent. We will then select the catch hook option here, and that will then create me a unique URL where all of my data will be sent accordingly. So we'll copy that one. And now I'll go to my DuckSoup options, and under the webhook, under the connect tab here, I'll turn this on. And in this case, I'm only interested in visit data. Put that one in there. We'll now go back to our Zap. We'll press continue. And now what we need to do is have some sample data to be able to populate our spreadsheet from, to make sure the correct fields are populated. So I'll press the send sample button. We'll press OK. Some sample data will be sent to this particular webhook. We'll go back here and we'll press the test trigger. Now what we can see here is that we end up with actually two requests. Request A is the visit event, but it's the visit type, but it's the create event, and that is the action that happens when a profile is first opened in LinkedIn. If you watch what happens when DuckSoup opens a profile, it first opens the profile, then it scrolls down, and then it opens the contact details. And it's the contact details that we're most interested in, because that's where the email data sits. And we get that through what we call the update event here. So request B. So with every visit, you get a create and then an update event. So if I now look down this update event, we look down here, we can see here that the email field is populated. So that's the most interesting one here for us. So we'll choose request B here as our sample. We'll press continue. And now, in order to make sure I only capture visits where there is an email address, I'm now going to set up a filter to this particular Zap. So I'm going to choose here to only continue if my data email field here contains, in this case, the @ sign. Now there are other options here for filtering as well. So you could also say, for example, in this case, you're only interested in the events that are updates. So you could say, for example, the event is the update, and then you can see exactly those events that are then only the update events rather than create events. That's an optional one, but as you get through further and further, you'll understand more and more the options that are available there. So in this case, this would have continued because both of those, it's passed both of those filter tests. So now we'll then say, right, what we would like to do here is we would like this data to appear in my Google Sheet. So we'll now go to Google Sheets. And what I would like to do, now you can do lots of different things here. You can carry out a lookup, you can do updating of spreadsheets, etc. But just for simplicity and time's sake, I'm going to show a create spreadsheet row option. It's the most straightforward. You then link to your Google, your Chrome account, press continue. And then here you just need to define which spreadsheet. Now, hopefully it's the top one. It's the webinar demo. There we go. And then we just specify which worksheet. In this case, I only have the one worksheet. So, and then the fields that I've defined in my worksheet also then appear here in these drop-down boxes. Now, the reason I always put the ID in here, because that's a unique number against each database entry in LinkedIn. So that gives us a way to be able to do searching, etc. And that's the data ID field. And then we just put in the appropriate fields from the catch hook. It's the data that's being captured by the webhook. So we'll just put in first name, scroll down a bit, last name, URL. I usually find having the LinkedIn URL is useful here as well. Where is that one? There we go, the data profile URL. And then the most important one for this instance is the email address here. So if we go further down here, data email, that's the field there. And just purely for, because we can, I'm also going to put a date stamp in here as to when this event actually was captured. So that's Zulu time about, yeah, a few minutes ago, three or 4 minutes ago. There we go. And now if I press continue, it will ask me if I want to press a test, have a test occur. So we should see a new line appear here. Let's go back to the Zap. We'll press test and continue. And there we go. We have the new line appear there with the appropriate timestamp. And now what I can do is I could now turn this Zap on. And now if I go back to LinkedIn, I could go to, for example, my network. I could have a look at my first degree connections, and I could now carry out, in this case, a bunch of auto visits to my first degree connections and gather their email addresses within that particular spreadsheet. So if let's put a filter on here. Let's look for people in the UK. Let's have a look. There we go. I don't think I have any other things set up to run automatically at the moment. Nope. Right, so let's carry out some auto visits here. And then we should see the spreadsheet get populated accordingly. Let's press the visit profiles. DuckSoup will now confirm. So there you are. That's the checkboxes if you wanted to use your DuckSoup points, which we won't. Press OK with that. And now DuckSoup will carry out some auto visits to these particular people, this particular list. And what we'll see is slowly the Google Sheets here will be gradually populated with the data according to my first degree connections, and also with the date stamp and their email address accordingly. This is a really handy way to be able to gather the data, and it puts you in control of what data you want to find as well. That's going to tick slowly through there. We'll let that run for a few minutes and hopefully start populating that spreadsheet a little bit more. Now you can also do exactly the same thing through Integromat. Integromat is a similar platform to Zapier. It's not priced in not quite in the same price range as Zapier, but it doesn't have the same degree, the same selection of integrations in Integromat. Zapier has a vast number of direct integrations. There we go. So we've now started to see this being populated with the visits that are being carried out through this auto visit that I have running now. So what we can do in Integromat is virtually identical. And because we've not spent a lot of time looking at Integromat, I'm going to very quickly walk through the same thing here. I've actually set up this already. As you can see here, if I open this particular scenario here, if I click on the DuckSoup option here, I believe I can now copy the address of this webhook here. Let's copy that into here. Again, we're going to gather the same information just through a different medium now. There we go. What we'll do is first of all, we'll turn this one off so that we're not sending the same information through two different things. So we can see here that this has been populating accordingly there. What we'll do now is we'll go back to our Integromat one. We've copied the address, we've populated that within our DuckSoup options here. We're gathering visit data through the Integromat option. Go to the right window, we'll press OK there, and now we'll turn that particular activity on, this particular scenario. So now we should start to see through these auto visits here that this spreadsheet will now get to be populated from the Integromat. This is set up in a very similar way. It's clearly documented on the website. And as you can see here, I've mapped the fields across into Google Sheets accordingly in exactly the same way. You can see here the data ID, the first name, last name, data profiles, etc. Accordingly. And what we'll see, there we go. So we've got more people now being populated in here. Difference here is I didn't put the timestamp on those ones. So you'll, as you can see, that these ones have occurred without the timestamp and have come from the Integromat one. I didn't put the the date stamp field into that particular scenario. So that's a way to be able to do that. One thing that you may also be interested in, let's turn that one off, is being able to capture email addresses of new connections. So as I said earlier, you only get to see an email address when somebody actually connects with you, when they become a first degree connection. And for that, you can also use Zapier or Integromat. And in this case, what you would need to do is create a scenario whereby DuckSoup recognizes when somebody has connected and then triggers an auto visit. So what we have to do for this one is, again, we would create a Zap, and in the same way that we did before, we look for a webhook. And there's a difference here. We use the catch hook again. We'll press continue there. And again, we have our unique URL. I know I'm going quite quickly here. I'm trying to cover quite a lot today. Apologies. Hopefully everyone's able to keep up, but it is being recorded and you'll get a link to that later as well. We'll copy this. And this time we're going to create another event here, another capture event here. But this time we're going to capture a message event. The reason we're going to capture a message event is because a new contact accepting a connection request comes in as a message. And that's where the message bridge comes into action as well, to pick up those messages and recognize that someone has connected with you. So if I now go back to Zapier, we've copied the URL there. We'll press continue here now. And what we'll do is we'll send some sample data so we can see something here. Again, we've got the message one here. We'll press send sample. We'll OK that. And now we should see some test information arrive here. So again, we see here we have more than one set of data. We have a member-to-member data type, but the one that we're interested in this case, because we're looking for new connections, is this invitation accept type of data. So that's the one that we want. That's the system recognizing that someone has accepted your invitation. So what we can do now then is to make sure that we only process those types is once again put in a filter. So we'll add in another filter here. And similarly to what we did with the email address ones, this time we're going to look for that invitation accept data type. We're going to say that that one, the data type in this case, exactly matches invitation accept. So then we're only going to process those events that come in under that label, because we don't want this to happen every time we get a new message from somebody. So we'll press continue there. So exactly matches invitation accept. In this case, it would have continued. That's good news. And then what we want to do is we want to trigger the system to carry out an auto visit in LinkedIn. And for that, we can use the DuckSoup trigger here. And as you can see here, in this case, we'd like to trigger an auto visit to the profile. Where's the profile that we want to visit? That comes from, I need to just click on the correct account. I believe it's that one. There we go. Oh, in that case, that's wait a moment. I'll just need to put in my credentials here. 1 second. Best laid plans. There we go. Copy and paste these fields in. Nothing like a real life demo to test you out. There we go. Oh, okay. Oh, I need the full URL, that's why. Not just the key. There we go. Let's try that again. Yes, continue. There we go. And that's required in order to trigger remote control activities on my behalf. So now that we've done that, okay, it's not going to accept that. But what we would have to do then, if that worked, is we would then point the trigger to go to the field. Let's find the data that it would come from. If we go down, we would say we want it to trigger it to visit the field of the data from field. So that is the URL of the profile that we want to trigger the auto visit to. Apologies that didn't work, but yes, I didn't have a chance to fully test that earlier today. So that way we can then make sure that DuckSoup automatically visits a profile as and when they become a first degree connection. And then if you have your visit capturing activity also set up, then you can have your spreadsheet or your Google Sheets populated accordingly. Let's go back a second to the other activity that we had earlier. There we go. Right, so earlier we did the test webinar one. So we had here a catch hook to capture all of our visits and to only continue if you found an email address. Now, rather than putting this data into Google Sheets, you have lots of other possibilities as well. Now, I'm not going to go through these in massive detail, but just to show you what we have here, you could also ask for example, if you go to MailChimp, if you were using MailChimp as your application of choice for managing your email campaigns, you could then automatically have a new subscriber updated, etc., etc., unsubscribe an email depending on the activity, add tags. Similarly, you can also, for example, trigger auto activities through Gmail or indeed Microsoft Outlook, or indeed another one would be, I guess, Mailshake. So if you were using those platforms in order to manage your email activities and your campaigns, you can have any of the fields of data that you capture from your visits. So it all comes from this data that you capture within the visit. You can have that then forwarded into the appropriate system that you require. Could even be your CRM system if that's what you're using. But that way you can bring all of your data together into the appropriate place automatically. I know I've covered a lot there. All of these things can be done in Zapier. Most of them can be done in Integromat as well. So it doesn't have quite the level of integration with so many applications as Zapier, although it is increasing all the time and the options there are improving. So those are the options there that you have with regards with all that sort of stuff. I've covered most of this already. Let's just go back to the slides. There we are. So webhook functionality to transfer emails to another platform, email addresses, so to Gmail, to Outlook, to MailChimp, to Mailshake, etc., etc. There's all sorts of different options there as well. So that gives you a flavor as to how you can capture your email addresses by downloading them or by triggering automatic actions to capture that information as well. If we carry on, very, very briefly, for those who were unable to see last week's webinar, we have the Dux Dash released in version 7.4. We're now on 7.4.1 after a few little teething troubles. Very, very quickly, if I just show you that here, if I click on the DuckSoup icon, you'll now spot down the bottom we have the Dux Dash. If you press the Dux Dash button, if you're a pro user, you get to see your profile, and at the bottom you'll get to see the Dux Store option. So this is where you can access the Dux Store to buy Dux points. If you're a turbo user, you also have access to some funnel stats, so some information regarding your activities and where you are with some of the activities that you're carrying out, the number of people you visited, invited, number that have accepted, the number that have follow-ups that have been received, been sent, and the number of people that have responded. You can also interrogate the server for queued automations that are there, so people who have messages sitting in the queue to receive automated follow-ups. You can also see your automation history there as well. With the queued automations, you have the option to delete certain commands if you want to as well. Finally, and very briefly, we also have the CRM connections. Currently, that's just Pipedrive, and I'm not going to spend any time on that right now because I realize I've been talking for nearly half an hour. And I think we've probably covered quite enough for one day. These slides are available via the chat, probably. I suspect Jin has them already. I sent them to her earlier. So if you want them as well, there's a very brief overview here of the Dux Dash. Should we open up for questions, Jin?
So the first question would be, many profiles have only personal emails. I see it difficult to mail people with the via personal email, to personal email, sorry. How can I tackle this? Do you have anything you could advise?
Yeah, it's purely down to what people choose to put on their LinkedIn profile. There are, as you say, most people with their LinkedIn profile will have that based upon their personal email, because that's something that stays constant irrespective of whether they change jobs or whatever. I mean, there are many different tools out there, which I won't mention them, but where you can do all sorts of email mining for people's email addresses. But one of the things that was interesting from a couple of weeks ago when we had our webinar from Tyron was that if you message people on the LinkedIn platform, people find it almost irresistible to read your message. People reading messages within the LinkedIn platform has a phenomenally high hit rate. People just tend not to ignore them. Whereas, as you say, marketing by email can be, yes, it can be very cost effective and very quick and very flexible. There are benefits to sometimes messaging people directly on LinkedIn, because people cannot resist looking at that unread message that's in their mailbox. So I think anecdotally there was, I think marketing messages have a 25% chance of being read, if I remember the numbers off the top of my head, whereas within the LinkedIn platform, you're talking in excess of 80% of messages being read and responded to. So it's very much a case of what your strategy is and how important it is for you to contact people either in their professional environment or outside.
Could you let me know the difference between, not difference, but how do you collect emails of second and third degree connections?
So with second and third degree connections, you would need, so you can collect some email addresses through just visiting. As I say, but from anecdotally, from my experience, I see between 5 and 8% of people have their email address visible to everybody. So you pick that up during a visit. But the most reliable way is by buying Dux points. And as you can see here, you can buy Dux points through the Dux store. And during an auto visit of a second or third degree connection, the DuckSoup robot will interrogate the systems that we have to try and find email addresses for these people. If it's successful in finding an email address, then that will cost you 1 point. If it doesn't find an email address, or it already has it there in its database, it doesn't cost a point. So yeah, is there anything you'd like to add to that, Jin, from a support side as to how that works?
Connected with the people's first degree connections can be scraped, emails can be scraped for free, and if you need emails of your second or third degree connections, you will need to buy DuckSoup points, even if you have Pro or Turbo.
Yeah, it's only through the paid versions of DuckSoup that you can do that. Okay, anything else?
And do you need paid version of Zapier for this to work?
It purely depends upon the number of tasks. There are all sorts of different payment levels within Zapier. You'd need to have a look and look at the various different plans. Say within there are different levels. We have the Pro version here, which allows 5,000 tasks. But there are all sorts of different payment plans there and different levels depending on number of tasks and the types of tasks. So because you have the ability for different functionality with regards filters and paths, which are only available at a higher level. But it depends very much on the number of tasks that are being run, and every time that a webhook is triggered and then it runs through a certain number, then that's the number of tasks that you would require. So you'd need to go back and have a look to see how busy you want to be, or how busy the robot is being on your behalf, as to how many tasks you would want. I believe that there's a free trial period with Zapier, after which you can do some testing and gauge how much you require. say the pricing with Integromat is quite different. It's somewhat lower, and there's certainly a free version of a free tier in Integromat, which allows you. I think it's not limited by tasks. It's to do with the amount of data transfer that occurs with Integromat. But again, yeah, if you look on their website, that's all clearly explained. And I think about a month ago, we had Thomas did a webinar on Integromat. Now, it was quite quick, but it's all documented and has been recorded onto our and is available through the webinars. So you can replay that if you want as well, where there's some templates existing with DuckSoup and Google Sheets and a few other things and bits and pieces, which should help you to get you going. This one here I created earlier was a very straightforward, a very simple one. It's very easy to do and pretty intuitive as well. But say Integromat is on the face of it more economically accessible. I think that's a politically correct way of saying it, than Zapier, but it does not have the same number of integrations built in, although it is improving. Okay.
A lot of people are asking about GDPR. Would you be able to elaborate?
Yeah, I think we have some documentation on our website regarding GDPR, which I mean, a lot of it depends on where you're based in the world and your compliance, et cetera, et cetera. So rather than trying to answer all of that straight away, I think we're better to take that one away and make sure that we have that clearly documented, Jin. Yes?
This has been provided on the live chat.
Cool. Excellent.
So, how to use email marketing with Pro?
So with Pro, rather than being able to use the connect feature, let's go back to the DuckSoup options. Hopefully you can see that. This screen is grayed out if you're a Pro user, so you don't have that option. But basically what you need to do then is to make sure that during all of your auto visits, et cetera, whatever you're doing, the thing that you do then periodically is you go to your DuckSoup icon, and we need to be in LinkedIn for that to work. Oh, I've still got the robot running. Let's let's stop that a second. There we go. What you need to do is periodically go and download your data. So if we click the download data button now for all of the visits that have been carried out while I've been chatting away here, I've got the robot run to fairly slow at the moment. If I click the visit data, this data will now be longer than it was earlier. So we can see here now, these are first degree connections that I'm visiting. And as you can see here, my email addresses are populating here accordingly through each and every single one of my auto visits that carried out while I was chatting away there. So that way you can capture the email addresses. See, mostly first degree. That was one that I was testing earlier, which is why it's third degree, and it was myself. Yeah, so when you're visiting first degrees, you can scrape them just carrying out an auto visit, download your data, and then yeah, you have quite a lot. As you can see here, you get a lot of data from against each profile, so you can start to build up your data set accordingly. And that's the way to do it with the Pro product, rather than the integrated product with Turbo, where you can then plug into other systems.
That's it for today. The questions.
Cool. Okay, just a quick one for the next webinar, which is scheduled for 2 weeks' time. So on the 7th of July, we have Charlie from Minty Digital. There's some, I believe, some articles on our website which have been presented by Charlie in the past. He's going to be presenting using LinkedIn automation to help build links for search engine optimization. Looking forward to that in 2 weeks' time. And as always, all the past webinars are available on our website through the link that you see there on the screen. Continue to plug them. If you require assistance, please feel free to contact us via the website. We have these options here available. Booster sessions primarily for pro users, new starters, those who are trying to get themselves going with the automation and understanding how Duck Soup works and the options that are available. The technical sessions are more focused on the webhook side of things and also the integration, but also we can help with CRM integration there through the new Duck Dash as well. But yeah, if you have an idea as to the process that you're trying to fulfill, we can assist with that and help you set that up. I've got a number of people who are set up a program of 2 or 3 sessions to help them build their bespoke solutions accordingly, and we can help facilitate that through these mediums. Some useful links here. For those who've been paying attention, we have a new addition, the 3rd one down, the feedback page. That's the user suggestions. There's quite a lot of interesting information on there about suggestions that people want to see in the way that the product develops going forward, suggestions you can upvote, suggestions that people have put there, and indeed have a read and see if there are other things that you think are missing from the product. It's always a very useful place to go to see what's coming in the future, and there's all the other links as usual. That's everything from me. I think I'll say goodbye to everyone and pass over to Jin to sign off. Thank you everyone for listening.